Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is July 9th, a very hot day anywhere in Ontario today. Thank you for tuning in. It is great to have you here. We're just seeing who's watching. Whitney, hi. Thanks for tuning in. Christopher, you're logging in. Good to see you as well. Anyone else, please, if you have any questions that we can ask our very special guests, put them in the comments and we would love to get to them when we can. A huge thank you to the Yukon Arts Center. And this is not Yukon, Ontario. This is Yukon all the way on the west coast. It's 5 p.m. local time there. And in Whitehorse, they are partnering. They're wanting to share in the communication that we have going on. And so thank you to the Yukon Arts Center for sponsoring this series of interviews and our bi-weekly opera pubs as well. We are coming to you live on Facebook, our Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. So if you're on Twitch and you're wondering, what are we doing there? That's why we're there. We're excited to bring a very special guest to you. We have, hi Alana, good to have you watching as well. We have a very special guest, Canadian soprano, Jane Archibald, who's all the way from rural Nova Scotia. Hi, Jane.
Hi there.
And we are very forgiving if the internet is not always as cooperative as a major city can be, but so far so good.
Good. Yeah, I'm on the Northumberland Strait looking across the PEI, and it's a very beautiful place, but yeah, the internet sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's great that you're available to do this. How is COVID life going for you? We're like in what, week 15 or something like that?
Gosh, yeah. I have a friend who says, when you say what day is it, she says it's Thursday the 14th of Mayuary. And that's just kind of the COVID thing. It's like Groundhog Day. But it's been really actually, I mean, pandemic and fear of, this awful disease aside, it's been a really kind of wonderful time for me and my family, actually, to have 4 months, almost 4 months uninterrupted together at home has been and really quiet, not able to distract with traveling or doing too much. We were told for much of the past 4 months to stay the blazes home. Our premier had a bit of a moment there with that catchphrase, and it kind of, we took it seriously. So it's been pretty good, actually.
Yeah. So that, the whole sort of realm of the business of being an international opera singer and keeping up the social media and keeping up this and this, was that easy to kind of stop, or was it kind of a nice little break?
Very easy. It was easy to stop. I don't think of myself as particularly aged or decrepit, but I definitely struggle with some of the social media stuff. It doesn't come naturally to me. It's not like my phone is not sort of an extension of my hand, and I'm on Instagram theoretically, but I just keep going, wait, how does this work? Like I don't get it. I'm used to Facebook. I am on Facebook with all the other grandmothers, I guess, is what is what my stepson tells me. He tells me that Facebook is for a certain people of a certain age, but I guess I'm one of them. But yeah, it's been fine. I have always been someone who can check out quite easily and needs to check out of the business, so to speak, the business, and just come home. And I don't know, maybe it speaks to maybe I need to be better at sort of blending my professional life and my family life. But I get home from a gig and I just want to like close the door on the room where my suitcase is and put on my jeans and be Jane the mom, Jane the wife, Jane the neighbor, Jane the woman who lives in Halifax and rides her bike to the store. Like that's very much something that I need to do to recharge. And it's not to say, I don't mean to imply that it's a hardship when I go on the road, but there are aspects of it that are, the being away from home and the being away from all those grounding things. So to have 4 straight months of just and we were all in the same bucket. That's the really interesting thing about taking a break from your career, right? There's a big risk there. We as women, we feel it when we have a baby in the business. We can't take a full. Maybe you can try, but you take a bigger risk. The more months you spend out of the public eye, off the radar, the riskier it is. But we're all kind of off. We're all on a forced hiatus right now. Now, some people are definitely better about putting on concerts in their living room and just reaching out, and they probably have maybe a bigger following on social media and have nurtured that more. That's definitely something that's not as much a part of my day-to-day career, and maybe it should be, but so far it's worked out. My little dipping of a toe in the water has been enough, but yeah, it's been nice to just take a break from all of those external factors and just really turn inward to the family and the home, and even just myself, and just allow my thoughts to kind of come up as they do.
That's very good to hear, and very important and healthy to hear as well.
Thank you.
There's a lot of young singers who I think look up to, I don't want to say older singers, but more experienced singers.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And for those who may not know, how does someone from Nova Scotia get to become an international soprano? What was your 2-minute or however many minute story how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, it's so easy. It seems like such a nice little point form list in hindsight, right? When you're at the beginning of that winding path, nothing is clear. And I always wished I had a handbook. I always thought, and it always felt like everybody else knew exactly what they were doing, but we're all, you realize everybody's just doing the fake it till you make it thing and sort of putting a brave face on. But so if I were to do sort of the Coles Notes version, I grew up in a really musical community. Nova Scotia is a very musical province, and I grew up in an extremely musical, relatively small town, Truro, Nova Scotia. And it's funny because brief side foray here, I got my hands on an old VHS, that's how old I am, of Fiddler on the Roof from when I was in grade 12. And I hadn't seen it before, or if I did, it was at the time. And I thought, oh, am I going to cringe? What's my recollection of that is that it was a good production for a high school, that we had a great music program. And I have to say, it's so held up. Like, I was going, wow, like the choral singing is good. That's an amazing set. The acting is there, like great pit band, it really, for a high school production, it was top notch. So it was good. It was kind of nice to have that reaffirmed, because in my memory, that's the base that I come from. And it was good to listen to it again with my professional ears. So I did every musical thing going. I was in a band, I played trumpet, I did a few years of cello. I took voice lessons starting at 11, which is quite young. I came to learn, but I had a wonderful teacher, Leslie Searle, and she introduced me to German lieder and French melody, and I just fell in love with all of that stuff. Did little Carabino, a few little arias, as a teenager, and it was just, very gentle, sort of nurturing of a young voice. So when I landed at university, I was in a really great position to kind of take off and fly, especially with my voice type. I mean, I'm the voice is filled out now, but it was, really quite a light instrument at that time, and those instruments are often ready to go sooner. And I'd already had a lot of exposure to languages and to dealing with my own stage fright and walking up on stage and presenting myself and all of that. So I did 4 years at Wilfrid Laurier University, and I studied with the wonderful late Victor Martins, who passed about 18 months ago. He was a fabulous teacher. And then I was, unlike a lot of people, my path was straight from undergrad out into the real world, so to speak. I mean, it's not to say I was finished with training and learning by any stretch, but I was doing a lot more learning on the job, which really suited me. I really liked that. And I moved into Toronto, and I did a lot of new music, sound streams, Queen of Puddings, any new music that was going. You know, I seemed to get a little bit of a reputation for being a singer who could learn that stuff quickly and manage it, and manage the musical challenges of that repertoire. I love to mention every time I can that I auditioned twice for the COC ensemble and did not get in. Just as and you know, and the COC then became, you know, one of almost like a home company for me. So it's a good lesson to never despair and never let anything knock you back for too long. And it just kind of inspired me, actually. I was like, okay, well, I know I'm going to do this. It's not happening here right now with this particular set of circumstances for whatever reason. So it's either do you stay and keep trying, or do you reassess, reevaluate, and redirect? And that's what I did. I thought, okay, I'm going to look beyond Canada. And I went to Tanglewood one summer and did that program, and I did the Marilla program. Didn't get in the first time. All of these ones, I had to audition sometimes 2 or 3 times. But so like the early years were university, Toronto. Then I went to San Francisco and I did an Adler Fellowship, apprenticeship with the San Francisco Opera for 2 years. And that was a big jumping off point for me, not necessarily in the way you might think. I mean, I got wonderful training and wonderful coaching from the staff of the Opera Center, which is the Young Artist Program, but it didn't actually get all that much time on stage or even covering. Just so happened that the repertoire they were doing when I was there didn't offer a lot for me. I did get to sing on the main stage once. I did in Italiani in Algeri, I'm forgetting her name, Elvira, the soprano role in that, and I covered a couple of things. But Pamela Rosenberg, who was the intendant there, introduced me to my first European agent, and we put together a CD, and I sent it over, and somehow this amazing woman with just a CD got me 3 contracts in Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, she got me my first Constanze in a small French summer festival in the south of France, and a second cast, Alcina in Lyon, and another Constanze in Marseille. That's right. So yeah, it was amazing. And so that was great. The first one was only like 6 months after it all happened kind of fast, and I flew over to France and sang this Constanze and met. So her name is Sophie de Lint. She's now intendant in the Netherlands Opera, and she's gone on a different path now. She's not an agent anymore. But I met her for the first time there, and we connected, and she set up a whole bunch of auditions for me in Europe. And I flew over in the fall of 2005, and I auditioned. I mean, I don't know how I did it. It was just the most intense 5 days of my life, because I was living in San Francisco. So it was a 9-hour time difference. And I flew from San Francisco to Geneva, and I landed on Saturday night, and I had a Monday morning audition in Geneva, Tuesday at Covent Garden, Wednesday at the Vienna State Opera and the Theater an der Wien, and Thursday at the Staatsoper Berlin. And I just, I was like easy jetting it with like, a plastic bag and trying to go without any luggage. And just, I sang Queen of the Night. I auditioned with Queen of the Night, and I'd never sung it before, but everyone was like, you need to sing Queen of the Night. That's like, if you can sing it, it'll open all these doors. So it was scary to sing for like the Grand Théâtre de Genève, to do that aria, and I hadn't like done it in a competition or anything, and so I did it, and it was successful, and I got a contract from that first audition. And so then I went to Covent Garden and went, okay, I'm going to take a break. I don't have to sing this one. So I didn't offer it at Covent Garden, and then I did in Vienna and in Berlin, and Covent Garden's the only place that didn't offer me a contract in that first round of auditions. So it was a little bit of a lesson that it was definitely a door opener for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Jane,
that's the not very short version, but that's how I ended up in Europe. I got several contracts, including a 2-year fest contract at the Vienna State Opera, and that started in 2006, and that's how I made the jump to Europe.
I'm listening to this, and it's kind of, I'm obviously connected with a lot of young singers and really good young singers, and I don't know if it's the way that training is done now, or sort of felt like that's what you have to do, but no, I don't know anyone who really kind of does that out of undergrad, kind of becomes sort of that sort of ready.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really funny. Sometimes the things that can feel like they're going to be the most challenging can also turn out to aspects of your personality, I mean, that can feel like they're maybe on the surface going to create a problem for you or create a barrier or a challenge for you. The flip side of them can be kind of a blessing, the blessing and the curse kind of thing. And I say that because as a child, people would say I was very shy. And I was, it's not inaccurate, but more specifically, I was extremely self-conscious, and I didn't like I especially didn't like people sort of looking down on me. Like, and it's stupid, as a 4-year-old, like I objected to the sort of performative thing of sitting on Santa's knee, for example, or we went to a church, and I remember going up for the children's hour before we were sent to Sunday school, and they would ask questions, and the kids would, how it goes, they would answer, and they would say something very childlike and cute. And I answered something one time, and they misheard me, and they repeated it, and the whole congregation laughed. And I remember just being so offended in my core, like, I did not say that, and don't laugh at me like I'm this cute little, like, take me seriously. And so there's like, that is like from birth, like there's something in there. And I was really ready to be taken seriously, to be, however young and inexperienced, I was really strongly motivated to get out there and be hired as a professional, be someone's colleague, be someone's equal, not necessarily in experience. I don't mean to imply that, but like to be taken as a professional. So I was really, I was really motivated to do that. And I was lucky. I was lucky that the voice was ready, and it happened quite naturally. The technique came together early. So I competed. I was only in 3rd year of my undergrad, and I competed in the Young Canadian Mozart Singers competition, which doesn't exist anymore, but it always happened at the same time as the COC ensemble auditions. And I made it. I was a finalist in that competition, and I wasn't even ready. Like I couldn't have even been considered for the COC ensemble. So I was early with some of that stuff, and there's a huge element, of course, of working hard and preparation and all that. But the other half is, I was lucky that the voice was ready, and I have always been a pretty natural singer. So that, I think a whole bunch of things came together to make me ready straight out of undergrad to take that on. But I mean, I was helped along the way, and John Hess and Dora Renanival. I just, I was ready vocally, and I had the smarts, but I mean, I showed up to my audition for them, and I didn't bring a CV or a headshot. I just was like, right. Afterward, I was driving back going, oh my God, I did it. And I managed to drive into Toronto on the 401 and not get into a car accident, and that kind of relief. And I went, shit, I didn't bring a CV. I didn't do any of that stuff that I was supposed to do, because I was very green in that way. And so people they overlooked that stuff and kind of helped me along, which everybody needs. There's literally no singer who comes along and doesn't need help and someone to believe in them and give them a chance and overlook, the foibles and mistakes that they make.
Oh my good. Yeah. Well, that's the kind of thing, especially if someone has a beautiful instrument, and ultimately that's what I love about this art form, is no matter how wild or innovative you want to be, if a singer doesn't sound good, or if a singer sounds great and you can hear that on an audition, it doesn't matter where their CV or headshot is. Like
No,
you'll
exactly.
use that as a, especially these days where it's kind of like you need a Facebook, you need a profile, you need a website, you need audio examples, you need all this. Well, you also just need a voice, and
Yeah,
that's
none of the
interesting to
rest
hear.
of it matters without the voice. I mean,
Yeah,
all that other stuff, I'm not, I mean, in some ways, I am not the person to come to for advice on self-promotion, on social media. Like, clearly, like, that is definitely a weakness for me. And I'm lucky that I kind of got, the snowball of getting the career rolling. That happened before that was necessary, because I mean, I like to think that I would have dug deep and figured out how to do all that. But there are, you see those singers to whom it just really comes naturally. Like, they're just tweeting like they're breathing. And I'm always like, no, I have to be careful, and I don't want to say something, because I'm a very direct, open person. Like, I'll either just, if I can't say something, I just won't talk about it. But otherwise, I'm going to tell it like it is and tell you how I
yeah,
really feel. And in that way, social media feels very, it's a very vulnerable thing, just to be able to tweet out to the entire universe whatever's on your mind at any given time. That could be dangerous after, a
yeah,
glass of wine or
yes, good.
two. So
Well, I think another
happens.
thing that I pull out of what you were sort of saying is that you had an incredible foundation to start taking singing lessons when you're 11. Um, I think that's rare for any sort of singer, but that also sound, and I'm guessing that all of that sort of training and experience was not necessarily in the public school system. Like, there were other ways that built you up that way.
For sure, it was a combination. I mean, we did have an absolutely, I mean, I sort of can't believe it now when I look back, just how lucky I was in the public school system. I mean, my elementary school music teacher was just like a dog with a bone in terms of every child was going to sing. And we competed all the schools competed in the local music festival. It wasn't the Kiwanis, but the same idea. And I mean, school just stopped for like 2 weeks. The only priority for those 2 weeks was prepping and polishing whatever songs your grade 2 or grade 4 class or the grade 4 to 6 choir was doing. I mean, not totally, but we had like extra rehearsals and stuff. It was highly valued. So I had that. I had music in my home. My dad was a physician, but an amateur pianist who played by ear. So it was my home was filled with music in that way. And then, of course, I supplemented all of that. What I got in the public school system was I was in the First Baptist Girls Choir, which was, they traveled internationally and did competitions and stuff. Based in Truro, that's just luck, that I happened to grow up in a town that had that. The cello, that was through the school string program. Trumpet was through the school music program. And then when I got to high school, we had like a one-man dynamo, Paul Barrett, who did pit band, stage band, dance band, jazz choir, symphonic band, wrote out like transcribed thing. If he couldn't find the music, he's transcribing it. And we did music, like the musical that I said, we did a musical every year that was, sold out. It was mostly very, very dedicated volunteers, be they in the school or otherwise, people who just loved music and wanted to share that with kids. And the standard was very high. So I was ready. I mean, I realize it more with each passing year, how much that foundation made me able to, like, I wasn't having to learn all of that other stuff during my undergrad. I could really focus on polishing my technique and developing that, because I already had figured out, I mean, of course it's still developed, but I had already been walking onto a stage and figuring out my presence and the head game of being nervous. I mean, ready to almost throw up with stage fright, ready to go on for your solo, and how to navigate that and, year after year kind of figure it out. So I was very lucky in that way.
Yeah. As Kim said, music in school is so important. And I hope that, the tricky thing with all this COVID is when people are looking to make cuts and where where's all this money that is going to come from? I just hope that that people are not looking at those areas, because that sounds like a wonderful place to have your kids sort of go through.
It was wonderful, and of course I'm one of not a few people who went on and did music professionally, but I think of all the people who participated in those programs who went on to, careers in all different kinds of walks of life. They learned so much. I mean, just the life skills, the collaboration, the joy of music. I mean, we need people who experience that depth of feeling, and you sometimes can't get anywhere else. You find your art form that you're most passionate about, but it's the arts that give us that depth of feeling, and we need those. We need to not be cut off from that part of ourselves. We cut people off from that part of themselves. This way trouble comes. You look at what's happening sometimes south of the border, and in our own, I shouldn't say just that, and in our own backyard, people cut off from empathy and joy and shades of gray and nuance. These are all skills, and these are all things that come from music education. It's hugely important.
Where a little selfishly wondering, how did you go about stagecraft, or just did that always come naturally to you? Or because straight out of, I know some people who go through masters have never done a opera role, like a performed on stage role.
Yes, it came pretty naturally. I never took an acting class other than what was provided through my undergrad, and whatever guidance I got in some of the young artist programs that I did. I guess that's the luck. I guess that's the talent part of it. I mean, but I tried to stay open. I tried to, it's funny, stagecraft is a real mix of trying to be authentic, but at the same time remembering all those technical things, like sing to the front and don't walk at the same time with someone else, all of that kind of thing. And listening, we were having a conversation the other night. My husband is a retired singer as well, and he was talking about the German saying that the others play the king. It's not for you to come into the room and show that you're the queen of the night. It's for Pamina to cower when you enter, or for the three ladies to say sie kommt, sie kommt, sie kommt. That's all part of it. That's part of being a good colleague, but also just being a good actor. To think that at any given moment, even if it's someone else's aria, the eye could be on you. You shouldn't be drawing it during someone else's aria, but you should think, if someone's looking at me, what is, Dalinda or Violetta or Musetta doing in that moment?
That is so important to hear. So that's good. I think, as you kind of mentioned at the beginning, everyone's path is so incredibly different, but it's so good to be reminded that you don't necessarily, not everyone needs to do 12 years of young artist programs to feel like you're ready to dive into the world. That's encouraging to hear.
Well, I think it's really important. I think you're not ready if your technique is not mostly solid. No one's technique is ever perfect, but if you feel like you have a reliable technique, the rest of it you really can learn on the job. And in some ways, I think you learn more from watching colleagues, from being asked to rise to the occasion. There's something about being hired. For me, being hired to do a role was the ultimate vote of confidence. So I would generally go into a situation like that and go, I can do this because they just hired me to do it. And so I'm just gonna live up to their expectations. I don't mean to imply that there were never, first day butterflies with a new role or in a new house, but I think learning on the job, if you are lucky enough to have that opportunity, I think it happens faster, and I think it all comes together faster. So the sooner you're brave enough to go out there and put yourself out there and do that, if you feel like your technique will hold up, because the better, because inevitably you have to have your first professional gig, your first time, and you're going to have to go through that process, whether you've done a master's and a doctorate in opera school and the training program XYZ. There's still that kind of work that only happens once you get out into the field with other professionals. And so the sooner you kind of break the ice there, I think the better.
Awesome. Big shout out to Wilfrid Laurier University as well. Was there ever a sense, opera's got a long history. Was there ever a sense when you were going overseas, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but being a young Canadian, did you feel like I don't want to say as good as everyone else, but did you ever feel like being Canadian, how do I stand compared to everyone else? Or was it, I can do this?
Yeah, no, it was the latter. I mean, Canada has a really good reputation, and I was aware of that. Like, people had already said, what's in the water up there? Like, why Canada has such good singers, and they're so generally like consistent, and they have a good work ethic. So I went in with that impression. I certainly found it stressful. I found the language thing stressful. That I felt like I was definitely behind. I would go into a rehearsal at the Vienna State Opera with colleagues that were from all different countries, and they all spoke English, so they already spoke a second language fluently enough to rehearse in, plus their own language. And often, if they were members of the house or had been in the business long enough, they spoke German. And I remember putting great pressure on myself to learn German, and I don't know what, I mean, I must have just been high. I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought, I'll go over there. It'll be great because I'm going to live in Vienna and I'm going to be immersed and I'll just learn it. And that was not going to happen. Like, there was no way, first of all. Like, I was at the Vienna State Opera during the time when they had sometimes only 2 or 3 days of rehearsal for a production. Wow. And I did role debuts in that scenario. Like, the first fall I did, my debut in the house was Musetta. I had covered it in San Francisco, but I'd never performed it. I'd never done I don't even think I did like a rehearsal. So I got there and I was supposed to have one rehearsal because I wasn't even doing the 4 performance series. I was doing the last 2 of the 4 performances happening in September. And I got to the rehearsal and it was the assistant director. The pianist called in sick. And so it was just me, the man singing Marcello, and the assistant director. And we didn't even get a real rehearsal room. We were in some kind of prop storage area in the attic somewhere. And we just did it. We just threw it together. And they're like, there will be stairs. So pretend you're coming downstairs and you'll come in from here and you'll do your, the first laugh that Mazeppa does and whatever else. And I did get a couple of rehearsals with Philippe Jordan, thank God. And that was great. And so I had connected and had a good connection with the conductor. But I mean, I was just almost like comatose with fear that first day. I was like, how am I making my debut at the Vienna State Opera in a role I've never sung before? The only colleague I've met is the Marcello. I haven't met anybody that I'm going out there to sing with. And nobody, they're just like, sink or swim, lady, on you go. And so on I went, and I was just counting, that first, after you sing Quando Menvo, there's that whole section where they're like, give me the check, and it's been years since I've sung it, and it's all like hard.
Yeah, business, a lot of business.
I'm gonna smile and just count the whole time, and I did it. But there was no space in that scenario for me to also be practicing my German. It was like, if I get 1 hour, I need you to tell me in English what I have to do so that I can be sure that I have understood what's happening. So that was really hard. In that way, I did have a bit of a complex about not being North American and not good enough with my languages. So that has always, my German's pretty good right now, but I'm still nervous to I still second guess. I go to say a phrase and I'm like, oh, I don't want to say that because what if I say der instead of das, or and I don't want to sound stupid, so I don't do it. But yeah, the languages are important, but you figure it out. It's a sink or swim situation, and you go over and you eventually learn.
Yeah, as Bruce said, German is friggin' hard.
I just can't
Yeah.
even. I mean, I finally got to the point where in rehearsals and stuff, I just don't care. I'll just be like, I'm saying the wrong gender, but I'm going to make myself understood. Um, but it's hard because so many people speak just excellent, fluent English, and so it's easy to just go, oh, just speak English to me. I don't want to. I don't want to sound stupid. But you just you have to press on, do your best.
Do you love that part or the side of the business where the stakes are high? You have, like you said, hardly any rehearsals, and we're doing this in a role debut. Like, or would you? And probably a bit of both. Or would you prefer like the 6 weeks to really get into a character and know a piece and blah blah blah?
Honestly, it's my favorite is right down the middle. If I am really well prepared, if I have done my work, a 3 week rehearsal process with a director who knows what they want and can clearly tell me is ideal because it stays fresh. Um, I'm not starting to get resentful about being away from my family because sometimes, it's a new production and there's like a clear idea of sort of the concept, but we spend a lot of time setting up the first scene and we go through 17 different versions of it. And I'm sure that what we end up with is better than like the first one, but it just takes a long time to get there. And it doesn't always, I don't end up singing it as much as I want to because there's something about like that 3 week window where everyone, the conductor, the director, the singers are forced to be really efficient and focused with their time. And it's enough time to really learn the staging, to connect the staging to the singing, to sing it through a bunch of times and keep it fresh and keep that little freestyle of excitement, like how's it going to go, which for me, I like to have. I don't like it to be so steady that it's just like I could do this, in my sleep.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, good to know. Are there any are there any lessons and are there any lessons that you now know that you wish you had known before? Any?
It's so funny because I've had versions of this conversation about my career and my past with lots of different young artists over the years or in different formats. But it's I have to say maybe it's just my observation because I'm not in it anymore. The young artist trying to figure it all out thing, but I don't know. You just disappeared. I don't know if you can still hear me or not. I'm going to assume that you can.
Yeah.
But my observation is that it's a kinder world now, strangely, because the market is actually more flooded with really good young singers. Like the competition with every passing year seems to me to be that much stiffer. And yet, what I observe among the young people trying to break in, is a much greater sense of like support and camaraderie and less of a sort of I have to, it's going to be one of us only, so I have to beat you. And I felt that, I have to say, and maybe it was a sensitivity on my part, but I felt more of that when I was going through, standing in one of the New York audition studios or the Met finals, or I never made it to the finals, but one of the levels of the Met competition. I found that really cutthroat, and I did fairly well in competitions, but it wasn't my best singing because again, it was about like ranking people and
Yeah.
I know I'm not alone in feeling that way about competitions. Some people are really good at them. I think most people find them sort of a necessary evil. But I would say to the extent that there still is that sort of level of competition, that to understand that everybody is faking it. There are people who really do know every opera and know the repertoire inside and out. And then there are a lot of people who are just faking it, and that's okay. And to not waste too much time thinking you have to be perfect or you have to know everything, that it's okay to say, I've never been to a Wagner opera. Like, what's that? Like, it's okay to say that. And it's okay to even get to like, to be 32 and say, I've never actually been to a Wagner opera because I've been busy doing my own rep and doing this and taking time off, whatever. I don't know why I picked that example, but there are all kinds of all kinds of things like that, where you feel like you have to fake it or pretend that your breadth of knowledge is wider than it is. And it's okay to still be learning. It's okay to be mid-career and still be learning. And I think that sort of fake it till you make it thing, that kind of literally applies to life. I mean, you know, my sister's an actuary, my brother's an engineer, my friends in education, they're all talking at different points about some aspect of their career where they felt a little bit like, God, should I know more about this, or should I feel more at home with this? No, you know, we're all just human. If you are trying your best and you're a moderately intelligent, hardworking person, then it's probably enough. And if you can remind yourself of that, then you can get rid of a whole layer of stress, sapping energy that could be better directed at your craft, at your artistry, at enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy yourself as much as possible, because that's what the audience likes to see. And the career, this is both true and not true. I was going to say the career only gets harder, which maybe sounds terrible. It gets easier in lots of ways. It gets easier when you're not having to, like, you know, beg for every audition. It gets easier when the career goes on a roll, of course, like, and you start to make better money and be able to save a little bit. That part gets easier, but the sacrifices start to get harder. Like those early gigs when you're all young and single and childless. And I mean, my first European gig was in the south of France. I mean, how much of a lie was that? I mean, I thought, oh, this is amazing. I'm staying in a hotel like in Antibes, and we go down and have croissant for breakfast, and then we go to the beach and swim in the Mediterranean, and then around 1 o'clock a van takes us to rehearse for a few hours, and then we all come and like we go to one of the gazillion cafes and drink rosé and have fun, and can drink rosé and still get up and sing Constance the next morning because you're 28. You know, and that's what I thought the career was going to be. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of wonderful moments like that, but as you get older and everybody, you know, suddenly has mortgages and children at home that they're missing with all their heart, and stress about, you know, should I take this gig or not? And well, I want to move in this direction, but people keep offering me this, and all of those other things. When you sort of move into mid-career, it gets harder, you know. So if you can find the joy and learn how to tap into that on a regular basis early and try really hard to maintain it, it helps sustain you through some of those other challenging, lonely, stressful times.
Well, that kind of ties into the next little thought, which is, you know, when it comes to family, and we both have young kids who, and it's kind of when you see how fast they grow, and when your when your escalation of career matches when they're young, yeah, how do you find that balance between not wanting to miss those moments, but then also what you're doing is setting up their future at the same time?
Yeah, it's really tough. And I mean, people start their families at different stages. I'm happy that my career was where it was. By the time I had Audrey, I was 36 or 37 when she was born. I'm trying to remember, but like I wasn't at the same kind of striving, like I haven't made it yet. I have to, you know, I had made some important debuts. I had a reputation by that point. That helped because no one can prepare you. Just nobody can prepare you for just how much energy is required. Mental, like physical energy, but just mental energy, and the emotion, especially of that first year. So you don't have a lot left to give by the time you've, you know, breastfed 5 times and been up with a colicky baby. You just, you know, you're like, you better have it together and be able to just kind of go on autopilot for a while, or it's not gonna be a good scene. So there's an element of luck there, you know, but it's sorry, I get distracted because I see stuff popping up on the people commenting on the bottom. But it's hard to figure that out, and it's I think it's probably hard at any stage, you know, to blend the two. I want to be able to pick very carefully what I do now, because if I'm going to be away from Audrey, it has to be worth it. You know, I don't want to do a role that I've done a million times, as wonderful as it is. I don't want to be away to do, you know, I've said no to new productions of roles that have been sort of calling cards for me, because I've done 10 productions of that opera, and it is a wonderful opera and I love it. But no, like I need to be almost distracted, you know, I need to be engaged enough. Like I did a year ago, a little more than a year and a half ago, I did Daphne in Frankfurt, and I was so excited because I mean, Strauss is my jam, and I'd sort of done a lot of the sort of lighter Strauss stuff. I'd done Sabinetta and Sophie and Aminta in Schweigsame Frau, and then Denka with the COC, and Daphne just felt like this grown-up role that where it all culminated, like my coloratura chops, but also like the bigger sound that I'm, you know, developing in my middle voice as I mature into my 40s. And I was just so thrilled by the music and thrilled by the production. And I missed her, and I still did all this, you know, I leave notes for her to open every morning at breakfast, and we FaceTimed and all of that. But I wasn't longing in the same way, because I was really fulfilled. I was just really excited and fulfilled by taking on that challenge. And I was proud to show her that. And I really, even when I do feel like, okay, you know, I'm doing something maybe for the money or for some other reason, that if the primary motivation is not necessarily an artistic one, I try not to let her see that. You know, I try to say, I miss you so much too, but I'm really good at what I do, and I'm really proud of the hard work that I do, because I want to be an example for her, whatever her passion is, wherever her life takes her. I want her to see that as hard as it is, she doesn't have to give up one for the other. She just has to figure out a way to make it work. And, you know, so far so good. You know, she travels to see me, and she traveled with me for the first 5 years, almost everywhere. So she's a very cosmopolitan, well-traveled little girl. But
so that's such a good reminder as well, that you know, it can feel like what parent wouldn't want to be with their child all the time, but that idea of showing them that mom or dad is really good at what they do, and that you're still Jane, and Jane is still an amazing singer, and Jane's got to sing because that's what fulfills her and gives her joy as well.
Yeah, because I want Audrey to grow up and be someone who follows her joy. And I hope that also involves a partner if she wants, and being a mother if that's what she wants to do, but that she's allowed to. I have to lead by example, even though it takes me away from her sometimes, because she deserves that. She deserves to know that, you know, and it's especially important for us as women, and for our little girls, just to say that you're allowed to prioritize your career, not over everything else. We all need to find balance. But I mean, men and women together, you know, we probably can find a middle ground, but that you don't have to apologize for following, for taking whatever talent you have and developing that, if that gives you joy. It's all just about balance and moderation. So, you know, that's why I'm trying to be careful. I'm trying to say no to the contracts. You can't say no to them all, because, you know, there are always consequences, but, you know, to say yes to the ones that really fulfill me as much as possible.
Lorna McDonald, she said, great advice. And that's kind of it. I think, yes, such great advice. Exactly. At any stage in our careers, find the joy. And whenever you decide that you're done singing, I think you will be an excellent educator, teacher, mentor. You probably are for many singers. So keep speaking up, and it's so good to hear.
Thank you. Well, I have to say I have enjoyed. I was really, really nervous to do master classes and stuff. I did my first one about 5 years ago, and I was really nervous because as I said earlier in our conversation, I'm a singer for whom things came quite naturally, both the stagecraft and the singing. And I thought, how am I going to speak about pedagogical things or technique? But I have, again, as I say, there are always new challenges. So mid-career, when you start being asked to do that kind of stuff, it's a whole different nervous kind of challenge that you have to overcome. But I have really enjoyed it. I just was lucky enough to do one in Lunenburg at the Lunenburg Academy of Music and Performance with a couple of singers who were also in Nova Scotia, and it was a distanced event with masks and all of that, and it was they each sang for almost an hour, and it was really enjoyable. So I do think that is in my future in some capacity. I don't quite know how that will look, but yeah, I'm happy to share and try and make the path a little bit easier. However, with a nugget of advice or just sharing my own journey in case that's helpful to anyone out there trying to figure out their own way.
It is. Someone asked, is there a role that you haven't sung yet that you wish dream role that you haven't performed?
Violetta's high on my wish list, I have to say. It's one I know. I think I'm like the only person in the world who's like, I have to sing some Verdi. Everyone's like, Strauss, Mozart. I get it. I hear that. It's just this inner voice that I just really love Verdi. And I covered Gilda in Vienna. I never got to sing her. There's probably not a whole lot of Verdi roles for me unless the voice, stretches some more in the next few years. But Violetta it's just really on my wish list. That's just like the quintessential opera diva role. And I kind of love that she's three different voices in the three different acts. And I love that challenge of trying to, thread the needle through all three of those and be convincing and dramatically. I would like to do that. I've done a lot of coquettes, as a colorateur. I've done a lot of coquettes and I've done a lot of bitches. But that getting to do the consumptive heroine, I would love to sink my teeth into that for sure.
Man, that would be a treat. It's a beautiful role that's the thing. A lot of so mathematical sometimes how they wrote operas and just the way they classified certain voice types to play certain roles. But Violetta would be a good one.
Yeah. Well, I'm working my way. I've pushed the boundaries a little bit. You always have to push beyond what people think you can do just a little bit and then prove it. Like Alexander hired me to do my first Donna Anna, and I think probably some people were like, oh, but that opened the door for a whole bunch more. And I've done I've done two Mathilde in Guillaume Tell, which is also much more lyric. It's not about going up into the stratosphere. And it took longer. I had to work it more, but once the voice warmed up into it, I was like, yeah, this is really comfortable, and I had a success with it. And Daphne was another step in that direction. So you just have to kind of keep, just ever so slightly, stretching it like that. And
have you sung the role in the practice room, Violetta?
Oh yeah. I mean, Violetta's been with me since my San Francisco days. They didn't have me covering her officially, but they had me singing a lot of different excerpts at various shopping malls and parks and stuff. We did a lot of that kind of, promoting the season as a young artist. So that I fell in love then and have been waiting ever since.
Is there a role that you know your voice will never sing that you wish you could sing? Could even be male or female. Is there certain or no? That's like a weird dream.
I don't know that I've like ruled anything out. I mean, of course, I think it's probably safe to say I won't be singing Sieglinde or Brunhilde anytime soon, or anytime ever. But I really try not to think that way because there's preference, right? There's what people want to hear. People have their own ideas about which voices should be singing which roles. But I actually think there are a lot of voices that are a lot more adaptable than we want to allow. There's the Fox system exists for a good reason, and it's a good kind of framework to jump from. But I think almost everyone bleeds into other categories, and I think you have to explore that. So I sort of say never say never. I mean, I've had some funny, would you ever do, like, stuff that people would probably be shocked at when I've been asked, would you ever do, like, Sforza? What? But did I say yes? No, I didn't. But you think about it and you think, well, maybe someday, who knows? People have moved on to repertoire that, you know, you would never guess when you look at what they sang, you know, a decade prior, and with great success. And I think if you've got a good technique and a voice that has cuts, there's probably a lot more you can do than not. So it's about being brave enough to say yes and try it out and risk, you know, someone panning it. But as I move into this stage of my career, I'm more and more inclined to do that, because you realize it's not going to last forever. So if you want a shot at singing, you know, whatever, say yes if the offer comes around, and be brave enough to live with the consequences. But you'll have had that experience, and that's
be brave
to remember when they retire. Yeah.
I love that. A last kind of fun question: are you reading any books right now? Is there a certain book that, or no books right now?
I just finished one, but it's propping up my computer right now because I was looking at, like, you know, I didn't want the, like, you know, double chin angle, yeah, exactly. So I was like trying to raise it. But I'm a read for distraction, read before bed kind of person. So you're not going to find me reading anything too deep that's going to make, you know, send me off into some existential personal crises. So but I do like good books. I don't like total fluff. So there's one by Jennifer Weiner. She's an author I like, that she writes relatable but very real characters with real issues. And what's it called? I don't even remember the title. I have to look. Big Summer. Kind of appropriate.
Yeah, very appropriate.
That's what I'm reading. Yeah.
Well, Jane, I can't believe it, but like this time is flown out. What kind of wine is that? That's what someone else has asked. What kind of wine are you drinking?
That is a Sauvignon Blanc. It's unfortunately like kind of lukewarm right now, but it's not going to stop me from finishing it.
Like everyone's wine in Ontario is like the massive heat wave right now.
Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. I wish you could all share. I wish I could show you View. I was tempted to try and set up my video with the Northumberland straight behind me, because it was clear as glass. We had two great blue heron out on the point, and just you couldn't see where the sky became the water. We're at my family cottage right now, which is why the internet is terrible. But I just knew that the kids would start playing frisbee and the sound would get loud. So instead, you have this lovely pine background.
No, it's beautiful. Well, Jane, you're one of Canada's great ambassadors around the world, and we're so lucky when you get to come back and sing in Canada, in Toronto especially. So thank you for taking the time. I know that time with family and everyone is very special, but I appreciate this, and I know that anyone who's been listening appreciates it as well. So thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Good
Awesome.
night, Canada.
Yes, exactly.
Take care.
Awesome. So that was soprano Jane Archibald. Thank you so much. Words of wisdom to listen to. Thank you for tuning in, for those who did, on either Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. Next week, a week today at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're very lucky to have Deanna Pauletto and Quinn Kelsey singing some duets with us for Opera Pub right here on ATG's Facebook channel. Thank you again to the Yukon Arts Center, and thank you for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.